welcome to another episode of Cannabis Marketing Live. I am your host, Jake Litke, the CEO at MediaGel, and today we have Steph Vrona, and we are going to be talking about retention, which is something that I like talking about, so I'm excited about this. Welcome, Steph. Steph of High Def Studios.
Yes.
Um, you've got a couple different things under your belt that you're doing. Let's start off with just like kind of a brief introduction of what you're doing today in the cannabis space, and then we'll rewind and talk about the journey a little bit.
Absolutely. Oh
Yeah.
God, where do I begin? Um, well, at the core, I help retailers to stop bleeding margin. Back up. Yes, I help retailers stop bleeding margin on discounts by building retention systems that can turn one-time buyers into regulars. It's been a long, very long road in cannabis, and after I left my last role, Jake, if I had one more CEO tell me that we needed new traffic, I was going to lose my mind. There's so many retailers that are just not taking care of the traffic they already have, and I understand the importance of acquisition. There are only so many new patrons that you're going to be able to capture in any single market, though. And retaining them just seems to be a lot more important. And then doing research and digging into it a little bit more, there's some pretty stark numbers out there for what retention is worth and the cost compared to acquisition. It's actually kind of crazy. I went and double, triple checked them, and I know they're all industry based, but the numbers are kind of nuts.
Yeah, the numbers can be quite shocking, especially if you hook up your analytics correctly and understand what's going on. We focus just on the digital side, and we've been able to measure the difference between. We take the cohort of like regular shoppers, which we usually define as someone that comes in at least once every 60 days, every 2 months, right? You could define it less or more, but even with the people who are your regulars. And a lot of retailers come into the conversation with an explicit instructions in the beginning, like, oh, I don't want to serve ads to my current customers. I only want to serve ads to new customers. But you can see with the data, if you are in fact serving ads to your current customers, you get incrementally a lot more revenue, 20, 30, 40% sometimes in terms of staying engaged with the customer and making sure that they come back to you versus go somewhere else. And if you dollar for dollar, it can actually be a much better return than trying to get new customers.
Absolutely. I mean, and plus the pull with new customers is always a discount, right? So your
Yeah.
average tickets are probably going to be significantly lower than what your target average orders are. Um, And it's the other thing I've noticed too, especially running High Def Studio and working with so many different types of dispensaries, is absolutely nobody is factoring in acquisition cost with their retention gain. That's kind of a big one. It's one of the first things that I tackle going into any new client. It's like, well, yeah, we're focused on retention, but you have to lead people through your customer journey. And the very tip top of your customer journey is all of your acquisition methods. If you're going to events, how are you separating and talking to people that found you at an event versus someone that maybe saw a digital advertisement?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's another thing. Another gap that people have is allocating all the costs that actually go into customer acquisition. It's one thing to say, "Oh, I ran a Google ad and I paid this amount for the click and I got this conversion rate." But there's people costs that were involved in building the creative. There's your other channels because almost never is it that it's a single touch point that brings someone in, right? They may have seen a billboard, they may have seen a digital ad, they may have done a Google search. You've got to add in your discounts, right? So you get offered a 35% discount. What is your actual margin dollars that you get from that? And in aggregate, is your acquisition program profitable? And over what time frame, right? I will say that on customer acquisition, some people forget the LTV of a customer, right? Of saying that, okay, well, yes, you had a $60 acquisition cost and they spent $75 and you only made $30 on that, and so you've got a negative acquisition cost. Then you go back right into retention because that's where your LTV comes into play. And if you look at large companies, and I like to take like direct consumer internet companies as a good example because there's much fewer touch points in those situations. But I don't know if they're doing this now, but years ago, Netflix customer acquisition cost is like $500, right? And they would offer that to any affiliate. Like if you can bring a customer in the door, we're willing to pay $500, right? Now, the subscription is $20, but they understand the lifetime value of their customer and they're in a position where they can afford to wait years for the customer to be profitable. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of variables to think about when you're allocating your marketing budget, both with acquisition, but if you don't have the retention behind the acquisition, then it's not worth the money in the first place.
No, and I mean, none of this is easy, right? Like LTV is something that I do hyper focus on. I built calculators for my retailers to try to calculate that out, just putting in acquisition costs. To your point, how many different points of acquisition costs can you mark and actually attribute to it? LTV is not easy to figure out, but there are ways to get kind of close to it. I personally like to run LTV on 14-month rolling for
Yep.
visit frequency and then average ticket. But I also take average ticket out of, say, my loyalty program and my point of sale, and then I loop in finance. What is the average ticket number that they have? There's some stuff that my finance teams have done. I'm not in finance. I have no idea what he did, but his average ticket was very different than what I had. And if
Yeah.
that's the goal and we want to be realistic, and that's the other thing, being realistic about your goals. So the vast majority of retailers just take that one average ticket number and then they increase it 20% and run with it. But if you actually break down your customer base and how much most people are spending, it's far lower. Um, 80 versus $50. It's pretty significant. And then you're kind of setting your team up for failure. So kind of same point on lifetime value. We have such crazy seasonality in cannabis. Like one year, the Super Bowl came to Arizona, and then the expectation for the next February was to beat that February. No, what am
Yeah.
I supposed to do?
My favorite thing about February is when people are running like month over month analysis is when they forget that February only has 28 days and the month before had 30 or 31. They're like, sales are down 10%. Well, there's actually just 10% less days. So let's look at the actual number of days and analyze it that way.
There's so much math in marketing. Someone should have told me that before I got into this.
Yeah. Well, speaking of getting into this, we kind of skipped over one of my favorite conversations, which is how did you find your way into the cannabis space? And you've been in for a while.
Yeah, 2016, 2017. It was honestly a fluke. I was working for a staffing agency at the time and internally, and everybody knew that the company was getting acquired and I was losing my job except for me. I was like 24, I think. 2016, I was like 25.
Okay.
My first actual real job, and I was at that company for a really long time. Um so one of the staffing managers had approached me and she's like, "Hey, you smoke weed, right?" I'm like, "How the fuck do you know that? No one's supposed to." She's like, "Shut up, nobody cares." It's like, "You're not doing it at work, no one cares." But she's like, "I placed an accountant at a local dispensary and they're looking for someone to redo their website. Would you be interested?" Yes, absolutely, I'm interested. I went, I interviewed, I got the job. Couple months later, big MSO came in and acquired that company, and they're like, you guys are crazy. Why do you have a web designer on your payroll? Get rid of her." And my boss went to bat for me and she's like, "No, she can do other stuff." So I moved into a project specialist role in the dispensary. That was probably the best thing ever for my career. It allowed me to get my hands in every single department without stepping on people's toes. I got to learn the ins and outs of running a dispensary, how license renewals work. I'm in the garage setting up shelves. Like no is not an answer in my vocabulary. That was a very, very beneficial job. I did all their marketing, their social. I helped with SOPs. I did ops. I was
So
kind of doing it all.
project specialist, that sounds like a title that you give someone when you're just going to have them do everything. Is that what happened?
Basically, yeah. Because I mean, we had the conversation. It's definitely something that's a recurring theme in my career that I have trouble staying in my lane. And now, years later, being older, wiser, have experience, it's not that I wasn't staying in my lane, it's that I was trying to fix operational issues that would have made my job easier. And when I started High Def Studio, a friend of mine was like, "Why don't you just do marketing operations?" And I was like, "What even is that? What does that mean?" Because in my 8 years then in cannabis, there's not a single company I knew that had a marketing operations. I never had exposure to the role. So digging into it, I kind of got mad. I'm like, you're telling me there's been an entire role this entire time that's all the parts about marketing I love and none of the parts I hate? That's dumb. Why have I been
Yeah.
doing everything?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you were at you were how long were you there?
Oh, geez, timeline. So it was like 2016, 2017, I started. I worked for the Dispo directly and then was doing free work on the side for the big MSO. And then I got promoted into a regional marketing manager role. I was there until I think the end of 2019. And then, yeah, I moved to Arizona, started at a single state operator out here, and then pandemic hit. So getting to work, brand new job, brand new state, brand new everything right at the height of the pandemic. That was fun.
Yeah,
We did that. After that, I worked for a smaller mom and pop. And then after that, end of 2023, I believe, I started Head of Studio.
great. And
Doesn't seem like
so
that long, but it's been a decade.
yeah, I started in 2018. Also, just kind of got roped into it. My background is working in, technology around advertising and media, and I met someone who was, an investor in the space, and they were talking about how that they needed better marketing solutions, and one thing led to another, and then we ended up creating Media Gel, to solve those problems. And it's been an interesting, fun, and challenging road. Lots of great people, lots of ups and downs in the industry. It's been interesting to watch the cycles, and we've watched it happen in multiple states in on different
Yeah.
cadences, whether it's like limited license or not. Those are very different environments.
Yes.
Um, all right,
Did
so
you, sorry, really quick, did you start Media Gel in certain states or were you national kind of from the beginning?
we started national from the beginning, but we started in California, and that's where our strongest base of customers were at that time, just because that's where we were.
Fair.
We've expanded and contracted over the years with, market conditions, other things that have happened. At this point, we're operating in every state, and we've got some good partners we've been working with for a long time,
Heck
which
yeah.
is nice. It is,
Great.
and this, working for like a single store operator. It's difficult for a small operation to make meaningful investments in marketing. It just is, right? There's not enough top line revenue to
Yep.
support usually a full-time function. So the marketing person usually is a operations specialist or something along those lines for smaller stores. The market is obviously doing a lot of consolidating, which I think is helpful in many ways to create a little bit more stability in the marketplace, both for people working in the stores and also for consumers. Um,
Yeah. There's not really a lot of room on that point to experiment. And that I feel like has been the biggest piece that I've missed in my marketing career in cannabis is like
yeah,
not really allowed to just try things to see if they'll work. You have to make far more educated guesses. And I asked that question like, did you start in California? Did you go national right away? Because I think starting in heavy regulated Midwest was very, very good for me early on in my career. Because then coming to Arizona, where you can do kind of anything you want, I already knew how to operate in a very regulated environment. So then having all of that freedom, I could be a lot more creative. We could try stuff.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there's definitely some states that are much more difficult to do marketing in, like, Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, Minnesota. They're tricky to deal with, and we've run into situations where the creatives have to get approved, right? Like the actual creatives need to get approved by the government, and that's not necessarily a fast process. And so
Yep.
you run into situations where it's like, okay, you've got this activation you want to do, but nobody went and got the creative approved, so you can't run that.
Exactly why I build systems.
Yeah.
You will
Well,
never
let's
miss
talk
that step
about
running a system.
systems a little bit, and I guess I'd start with like for all the dispensaries you've been through and worked at and seen, what are some things that you see consistently that dispensaries may be doing? Well, I guess we'll start with what are they doing well? What are they consistently not doing well?
I mean, it really depends on the state. It depends on how mature the market is. I have found that newly adult use markets will typically have better customer service in a wider sense, like a bigger sense. markets that have been adult use for a very long time tend to feel very transactional. Budtenders make less. It's definitely more about upselling, value adds. Spark plug is very popular in those states as well because it's kind of what's paying the bud tenders. Um, the customer service piece is really big for me personally, just working in a medical market. And I'm a firm believer that all cannabis use is medicinal use. It's really nobody's business what anybody is doing to get through all of this that we all have to live through. Um, that said, with adult use markets, we've lost a lot of that education. So that's really the big miss that I see. But that's more of like a personal.
Yeah,
It just sucks. I don't like being shilled to. I don't like being upsold. I can't have certain products on the market, and it makes me very upset when I spend. Cannabis is not cheap, and those of us that work in the industry are a little bit blind to it. It's been normalized how expensive cannabis is, but taking a step back and actually looking at what things cost, it is very expensive. And when you get something you don't like, we don't really have like a return policy. There's not. It's just
yeah,
not normal. As far as like not doing or things are missing, really, there's not really a lot of touch points when you first join into a dispensary program. I'm the kind of person where I will go and I'll look on your website, I'll sign up for your program. Very few dispensaries have a welcome sequence, and that's crazy. I don't know what to
yeah.
do after I signed up for your program. I should have an email or at least a text message, something that says, "Hi, welcome. This is what we're about." It's like the big
Yeah,
thing.
I think you see it has gotten better. And like I was saying, some of the operators we work with that have larger teams and are more sophisticated do actually have those things in place. They have email sequencing and onboarding and, reaching out and reactivating things like that. But again, those systems they take time and energy. Even if it's great software that does it for you, someone still has to operate it and they have to operate it correctly.
Yes. It's just a tool. It doesn't matter what software you onboard, you still need someone that is going to set it up to go. I like to build my systems out first and then kind of evaluate software that can support what we want to do, rather than building your system fully around the software that you have. You run into limitations, and that does happen, but that's also where we can get creative if we're running into those kind of limitations or depending on the software feature request. Please and thank you.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about building a system, right? So we build a lot of software. I spend a lot of time building software, and when you're doing that, you have, requirements and specifications, and you do evaluations and figure out what the user needs are. And then my friend used to have this shirt, and he was a software developer, and his shirt said, days of work can save you hours of planning," right? And so that's that's where the
That's so true.
systems come into think, right? Because the more that you understand what you're trying to achieve, the smoother the execution goes. But I think it's just human nature to want to get into the execution right away. Like, I want to start building. Um, but the building is both faster, more productive, and more enjoyable if you do the homework beforehand.
Yes. I broke that habit pretty early in my career of wanting to execute immediately and instead started planning things ahead of time. And the main reason why is because I'm pretty much been a one-woman show my whole career. The biggest team I've ever had was 3 people for a single state operator. It was a marketing director, myself as a brand manager, and then we had someone on the team that was doing graphic design and handling social. Even through that relationship, though, I was still doing the vast majority of things. And then it was really second set of eyes, and then someone could take it to the finish line. Big MSO company overseeing 6 states. I was by myself. You have to have a system if you want to do more with less. And the systems I build are not necessarily set it and forget it, but the main component of it is the time that you invest in it every month or every quarter is more for updates and maintenance
Yeah.
than it is fully building. So to your question, like building a system, mine are based on customer journey and how we can achieve those touch points in the customer journey without recreating the wheel every month. So even something as simple as like having a promo calendar that is your one source of truth that both retail and marketing work off of for all promotions that are active. If it's not on the sheet, we're not honoring it. Same thing with
Yeah.
on-sites. On-sites need to go on the sheet to make sure that we have a promotion or some kind of incentive that is tied to that. And then it gives us data as well to see how well things worked. However big your spreadsheets are completely up to you, or whatever software you do them in is up to you. I'm sure there's custom things out there. I'm a spreadsheet person. I'm trying to not be a spreadsheet person. I don't trust AI like that yet. I don't
Well, the
know how to
trick
build.
is well, what you want to do is connect your AI to the spreadsheet, right? So you can like connect Claude directly to Excel or Google Sheets if you want now. That way you can see what's going on. Rick, I saw you raised your hand. There's a Q&A section. If you have a question you want to type in, go ahead and type it in there. Um, so yeah, well, let's not get down that rabbit hole yet because I could talk about that all day. We do a lot with that.
We need to follow up, please.
Yeah, we can do that. So you have some sort of audit system, right? Is that where you start?
Yes, always. I recently made it an individual package, but every build starts with a very in-depth audit. The audit mainly covers market research in your area. Surprisingly, your competitor is very rarely the dispensary closest to you. It really depends on your brand, who your competitor is, and where your customers are coming from. So, a lot of times, your competitor is the dispensary that is 2 blocks away on your customer's journey home, to work, picking up their kids, whatever their normal routine is. It's a dispensary that is just as easy to get to as you. And it might not be less than 5 miles away from you. It might be further, depending on how far people travel or like the state that you're in. I dig into point of sale data and loyalty data. Do we have duplicates? Are they talking to each other? Are things flowing? I don't want to get too into the nitty gritty, but I cover 10 areas total. And it's really everything market research down to what is the culture on your retail floor? Do you do daily huddles? How does retail support marketing and how does marketing support retail? How are you guys communicating with one another? Is there friction there? And then I take all of that information, and through that, we can build a retention system that is built for that dispensary. I want it to be plug and play for the team, just not set it and forget it. Then they have time to work on stuff they actually want to do. If you want to plan a new event, you now have time because you're not spending 6 hours pulling the deals together from 3 different spreadsheets and 4 emails. I've done that. That sucks.
Yeah. So let's talk about retention. I think that you touched on something that I see overlooked a lot, which is sort of a comprehensive analysis of what actually happened with your marketing effort. I think that in this is a sort of a tangential analogy, but uh, I would say a prime bad example of this is conferences usually is you come up and you're like, okay, we're gonna have a budget and we're gonna get our booth or do whatever and host a dinner, and you always end up spending more money than you plan to on conferences. That's just how it works. And then people come back and they give themselves high fives and they're like, met a lot of great people. And then many times there's not a really in-depth analysis of like what happens over the next 90 days. People kind of chalk it up as a win, sort of like if you did an activation in your store and you're like, oh, a bunch of people came. Great, success. Um, but but how do you try to measure that? Like when you're running programs with people and what the real net effect is on retention specifically.
So that we do that in the very beginning, and that boils down to what does leadership view as success for that program. Some dispensaries, they only care about AOV. As long as their program is driving higher average order value from before and after they launch the program, they're happy. Some only care about new traffic and acquisition and getting people through the door, which I always like to remind them, like, you realize I can't message people until like after you've met them, right? Like I can't do anything
Yeah.
with it. I've had a couple dispos that only want to see units moved on house products. So the vast majority of their program is built around their house products. Um, you just have to have a plan ahead of time. So, like in your case with the conference, for example, I know it's not necessarily retail, but what did you define as success before going to that conference? Was it booking demos? Was it getting 5 more people into the next stage of your pipeline? Is it closing 3 sales in the next 90 days, depending on what like your lead time is for closing a sale? Just set it ahead of time.
Yeah. And it sounds so
Fun.
simple.
It's I know
Should
I don't
be.
mean to. It's just pick
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so you have your audit that you do where you kind of establish lay of land framework, planning, where you want to go. How does that differ for someone who's got one or two stores versus an MSO? Because those are different beasts.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. It's the same audit. I go through the exact same things. The only thing that's different is really the approval channels that you have to go through to get something executed.
And is the output of the audit a plan?
So the audit right now has many deliverables, and I'm tweaking them and I'm defining and I'm perfecting because if I'm not completely happy with it, and the reason that is because when I did my audits previously, and I've gone through like some business coaching stuff, the audit that I do is was never intended for the client to see. It was for me to build the program. It's
Okay.
I look at my audit like the book, and then I look at building the retention program as the open book test. And I can't do the test without the books. I got to build the book. And now I'm building a book that the client gets, and I want to make sure that it's valuable for them. So through all of it, right? 10 of them, 10 areas, market research, platform and point of sale, compliance, how the patron views everything from their point of view, overall comms, rewards and offers, how the program is set up, who on the team is even monitoring, and then I look at retail and marketing. I do all 10 of those steps, regardless if you're a one location dispensary or a three state dispensary. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Now, well, I'll make an assumption. You can tell me if I'm wrong. Um, Especially between a medical and adult use state, the results of the audit for an MSO that's in three states, my assumption would be that each of those states would have somewhat different results from the audit.
Yes.
Yeah. How,
Every state is treated like an individual client in my world because I have to redo all of the work. There's some stuff that you can kind of meld depending on how well the dispensary has done their cross branding from state to state. But they are treated as individuals. So it's still the same 10 steps.
same 10 steps. Okay. Um, what are some themes that seem to be the most consistently in need of repair or attention um, when you do that audit?
The
Is
big one
it
is over messaging.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up actually when you were talking about how some things have changed. I feel like it's calmed down a little bit, but for a while, like the text message blast, that was like everyone's easy button, and I get it because it works. Like you push the button and some more sales come in, right? But you've had people that were sending text messages like every day to customers
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah. It's a lot of times that kind of stems from when you get to the root of it, they're afraid people will forget about them if they don't text them every day. That is a much bigger conversation and issue if people are forgetting about you, if they don't text them every single day. I've worked with retailers that would send 2 emails every single day to pretty much their entire list. Um, my whole thing on that, like the over messaging is definitely the biggest issue that I have come across. And it's once they opt out, you have no plan to get them back. Are you going to rely on your bud tenders to verify that every single person at the counter is opted in for both texting and email? Nope. That's never going to happen. They don't have time for that. And then there's some dispos that run transaction time as a KPI on the floor. You're screwing yourself.
Wait, transaction time? What does that even mean?
It's they rank their bud tenders and based on how long their transactions take, and then they're penalized if they take too long because if they're within like 2 to 5 minutes, you can see X amount of customers throughout the day.
I see.
But if they're 5 to 10 minutes, it's half of those. Very weird. Not my favorite KPI.
All right. Let's go back to the mailing and texting everyone. That's like just a complete lack of segmentation.
Yes, please
Um,
stop.
let's say you can go in and say like to put in, Steph's segmentation mandate. How do you tell people to segment their customers?
I start with the welcome journey. That's the first thing. That's the very first thing anyone should have in their customer journey and set up automated is a welcome sequence. And your welcome sequence should be as long as the number of visits that you use to consider or you need to consider your patron to be loyal. So like industry standard, from what I understand, is about like 3.5, 4 visits. So my
Okay.
welcome sequence will usually take a patron through their first 5 visits. That might be a welcome sequence that takes 6 months to get through. That's okay because the point is leading your patron through their purchase journey. From there, I win backs are definitely very important to have implemented. And if you have expiration dates on your points, your win back should coincide with those. So, for example, if you have a 180-day win back, and that's like 50% off anything in the store valid for 7 days, but your points expire at 180 days, and that patron comes in to redeem that 50% off and their points are gone, they're going to be very upset. So, I give it like 8 more days, 8 days beyond what your final win back offers is when you should expire your points. Um, Regulars. So not even just regulars as a segment. I like to do regulars that are performing a behavior that you like them to do and you can encourage them to do more. So a frequent flyer type of campaign that you run. It's your average visit rate per month is 2 and you want people to get to 3. People that get to 3, you throw an incentive to them to continue to do that. And then you can advertise, become a frequent flyer with this dispensary. Or one of my favorite ones to run is just like a monthly offer. And it's for anyone that did shop in the last month that spent over the average ticket goal. And then you just give them a discount that doesn't take them below your average ticket goal. Um, those are really the main ones. It's hand holding, just hand holding through the experience. I think I have like over 30 touch points right now in my full customer journey, and we release it in phases. So you don't launch everything at the same time. You drip them out every quarter. That way you can measure, your team can get familiar with it, and your customers can get familiar with what you have added in there. And then, of course, feedback loop. Tell people that you listen to them and you change things. It goes really far.
Yeah. So I'm curious as to what you see, like two things, how you would define things, and then what you see when you talk to your clients in terms of what a regular shopper is and what a win back is. We have we have our system set up with dials, so the advertiser can kind of choose their win back window or choose their attribution window. Um, but what do you see as industry norms in terms of is it someone that comes in once a month, twice a month, once a quarter?
It depends on the state, of course. So that is part of my audit process when I go in. I see how frequently do your customers shop on average. For the dispensaries that your customer does come in and shop, typically about 30 days, I start win backs at 45. That way you're not giving discounts to people that were going to come in anyway. For those that they drop off much sooner, you can start that at 30 days. My preferred is 45, 60. Yes. No. 45, 90, 180 is my
Okay.
preferred. It's a much longer window. Industry average that I've seen, or just the most common, is 30, 60, 90.
Yeah, that's the way ours is set up as there's a few dials you can choose, 45, 60, 90 are in there. Um I
And you can
when
have
we
different win backs for category. If you're a flower buyer, you're going to buy different than if you're an edible buyer, cart buyer.
that's true. And the data that we see, if we look at just win back cohorts, which by default is 60 days, meaning someone hasn't shopped in 60 days. Um, the win back shoppers, they come back like with a strength, it seems like. Like we have people haven't shopped in 6 months. They show up. I was literally just looking at this data this morning because I was looking at it for a specific customer. And like we had someone that had not been in like 4 months and then came back 5 times over the next 90-day period. I don't know. Do you see any statistics like that, or is that just something that we're seeing in our data?
I honestly don't think I have enough data to pull that accurately.
Okay.
It's kind of one of the more negative things about being such a small operator in this space is I don't have a data lake.
Oh
I'm doing
yeah.
it all by
Well,
hand.
yeah, we have a big data lake. We capture a lot of data. So
I
And then
want
we
one.
tie it back to the POS, and then we can look at, the customer purchase behavior, and we can see things like what is incremental lift for your regular shoppers if you advertise to them. And then another one is a churn analysis. So like what is your churn rate, organic versus exposed?
Yeah.
And that's usually like the incrementality varies a lot. It could be 10%, it could be 60%. The churn is usually, 5 to 15% churn reduction, which, when you deal with percentages, it doesn't sound like that much, but it's actually pretty impactful.
That's very impactful. Absolutely. I mean, it does make sense though, because depending on how you're segmenting your standard messaging, the customers that are receiving win back should also not be receiving standard messaging. There's a reason why they're not replying to it or responding to it. So once they come back, they're back in your messaging ecosystem. They're getting your updates. They're seeing what you have new that's cooking. And hopefully, in the last 60, 90 days, you've introduced something different in your dispensary or improved some aspect of it. I'm really big on feedback loops in those as well. So, like, even if they don't want to come back or to shop, I do include in those win back emails and messaging. Can you tell us why you left? Was it product variety? Was it our butt tender was mean to you? Is it you hate the parking in our parking lot? That's definitely been feedback I've gotten. Like, you have 8 parking spots. What do you want me to do? I'm like, no, valid. Super valid feedback. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it's product selection. That's what I care about. Like, I will drive an extra 5 miles to go to a different dispensary because they have two products that I want.
Yep.
And the dispensary that's closer to me does not have that.
Yep.
But everyone, there's all kinds of different shoppers. And I think that's another place where people fall down is they just kind of group their shoppers into one cohort. Or they group them into like flower versus edible, versus like high frequency and low frequency. And those are starting points. Um, but human beings are pretty nuanced, and figuring out who cares about what and then sending the messaging appropriately will result in better outcomes.
I'm excited for AI on that front. If we can get more technology in the space that allows patrons to give feedback on how products affected them or how just their general experience, then we can stop sending messaging based on what people bought and start sending messaging based on what people liked. And there's a lot of different ways you can run that data by hand right now. It could be, well, who bought this brand but then never bought it again, or people that normally buy, I don't know, Wild, for example. How often did they buy other edible brands? What were those edible brands? What were those products specifically? Were they rosin edibles? Were they like something that's comparable to what they had before? And that's really the data that I try to go look for as far as retention messaging goes and how to hit people where they are to get them to act on it is like 710. I want to know what 710 users are reaching for when 710 is not available.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've definitely been in a scenario where my primary choice was not available, and then you start looking around, and then that creates an opportunity for that brand, right? Which is now you've been given a shot to capture customer.
Absolutely. And then bud tender training plays into that as well.
But
Did your
tender
bud
training.
tender recommend it? I do take bud tender advice more often than not when it comes to flower because I don't get to try a whole bunch of flower. I stick to my tried and trues, and when those aren't available, I might step out, but then I'm usually disappointed in the results because it wasn't what I wanted. Just recently had a completely opposite experience. They instead of the one that I was going for, he's like, dude, you should try this. It's actually like really good. The buds are huge, which I get people like to advertise. I'm like, it's going in a bong. I don't care how big the
Yeah,
buds
it's
are.
ground in little tiny pieces.
Um, that flower puts me on Mars. I'm very happy with it. And it's the thing that made me open that dispensary's next messaging because they had that brand in the subject line. So it's good signaling. And everyone's going for brands. I'm sorry, I don't know a single house brand on the market. Me personally do not know a single house brand on the market that people are going out of their way to get.
Yeah, that's generally going to be more of a merchandising and value situation. Um, well, let's talk about the windows of post customer acquisition, right? There's so a book I read a couple of years ago called Behave. It's by Sapolsky. He's like a neuroscientist, and the book is broken down. in like it basically describes how your brain works, and it breaks it down. And like the first chapter is about like what happens in milliseconds, and then multiple seconds, then minutes, and then days, and then weeks, and how your brain makes decisions, right? Um, and I think it's interesting to break down a buyer's journey, or in this case, a retention journey, in the same type of window. You've got the immediate purchase, you have then probably the consumption of the product itself, which happens over some number of days potentially. You have your drip campaigns where you're re-engaging. What are the time buckets that you use in your methodology for those touch points?
It is completely dependent on the dispo. It's no two that I have done this far in 2.5 years have been the exact same. I've run a program where the touch points were at least once a week, and then I've run a touch point in a much more busy market where the touch points were about 2 days apart. Both performed about the same. Um, it really depends. It's
It is hard with cannabis in general to have any generalizations because everything is very different from geography and brand.
it
Maybe I can
it
ask it.
definitely is. It's like I'm just thinking through like the full customer journey and then spacing all of that out. And it kind of all boils down to what's important to the dispensary and what they want to move. So, one program I recently did, we based all of the touch points on basket mix. So that marketing isn't necessarily advertising new flower to flower consumers, but to also consumers that typically buy flower alongside other categories. Maybe not crazy consistently, but then we can dig deeper into the data and find also brand similarities and patterns. And then determine from there if they would respond to that particular brand that we're pushing out. You can get really nitty gritty.
Yeah. I was just kind of thinking more in the sense of like in the broadest possible buckets of immediate post-purchase and then first touch point where you're going to reach out to them. Like, do you send do you want to engage with the customer like right after the purchase or the same day? Do you want to wait 2 days? Like, is there, I know you said it's varied wildly, but I don't know if you have some like general
Yeah. So, I mean, brand new customer, I have a different customer journey for if they signed up for messaging before they came in shop versus if they signed up for messaging after their very first purchase. The ones that where it's after their very first purchase, that needs to be primed by the bud tender, like, hey, you've opted in for our messaging after this transaction. Of course, thank them, prep them for what they're going to receive. Maybe it's a text message confirmation that they need to do double opt in. And then the rest of the information is in an email for like welcoming you and giving you some more information about the dispo. That I would like to see sent within 24 hours, more instantly if we can. But given that it's marketing messaging, you have to play within what is it, like 8 to 6 or something like that. And if your dispo's open late, it's going to be next day anyway. For people that signed up for the program but have not yet come and shop, I have one touch point that's about a week out if they still haven't came and shop. Horrible grammar, please cut that.
of
And then if another week goes by and they still haven't purchased, like the first one's just to remind them, hey, you got a first time patron deal if that's something you offer. And then the second one sweetens the deal just a little bit, just to get them to come in and make that very first purchase. And then they're in your normal ecosystem. So they're going to get into that welcome sequence. It's also a different, right, customer journey for if they found you at an event
Yeah,
and
that
then
makes
did
sense.
or did not come shop. I love the branching, like the flows out, like did this, did not do this, and then picking based on that. I love doing that. It's better.
Have you ever heard of N8N?
Oh yes, I was
Okay.
just talking to a friend about it for it's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole for
It
sure.
is.
I love
It's
my
a
AI
rebel.
tools.
But the good
I'm
news
not
is you
paying
can
20 bucks a month.
use it's not too difficult now to use Claude or ChatGPT or whatever to build your N8N
Yeah.
flows for you. So that makes it a lot easier because it can be tedious. But I just
Yeah.
thought of that when you talked about branching because that's effectively what you're talking about, right? Which is bringing three
Yeah.
different points.
I learned recently through Kristen McFarland that you can do the flows and connect it through Klaviyo with just someone that knows how to connect Klaviyo to a point of sale system. I can probably figure it out. I'm probably going to call Kristen though. I didn't know you could do that. And
Yeah.
then AIQ released their flows, and I was like, this is exactly what we need. And that's when all of the flood came through like, oh, we've had this for years. We have? Through who?
Yeah.
I love
Um,
branching sequences like that. It's personalization is key to getting people to engage with your messaging, and cannabis lacks it severely. I am so sick of getting shilled distillate. I don't even open messages anymore because I know it's going to be distillate.
yeah, fair enough. Um, let's talk about measurement of outcomes, in this case, retention. And we can maybe start with loyalty programs, and have the conversation that any sort of any marketing function is going to get a question from someone at some point, which is like, well, how do I know that these people weren't going to do this anyway? Right. And that the answer is, well, yeah, some of them would have. That's like
Yep,
there's always some of them that would have. And the question is in aggregate, does the investment, more like does the result worth the investment, right?
yep.
Um, how do you try to tease that information out of systems to help people understand what the value is?
So, out of a direct loyalty system or your direct comm system, the only metric I care about is click visit rate. It's wonderful that you have a 40% open rate, but if 0.01 of those people actually came in and shop based on that messaging, that's very expensive and it's a waste of money. So click visit rate is really the only metric that I gauge as success for the messaging. All that being said, I do have like standard KPIs that I run for dispensaries, and then I also have a much larger list of potential KPIs that is really just like I said before, every dispensary has their own idea of what success is. So I build separate reporting around that so they can keep tabs on it. But beyond that, it's you just have to check in on your campaigns. If you launched something 3 months ago, let's say a win back campaign, and you offered $5 off, and zero people have come in to redeem that, but like 40% of the people have opened it, you need to change your message. Don't be afraid to change things. It's okay. Your marketing is failing. That took me many years to learn. Marketing is failing. You were learning when you were failing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always waste, so to speak, in sort of a and even with the waste though, like that's another thing I think people miss with like display advertising, for example, right? So you may not get a conversion. In fact, you won't for most of it, right? Because it's a broad, it's like a bullhorn, right? You're sending messaging to a lot, in some cases, millions of ad units in a given month. And the single digit or a fraction of a percent of those that get spent are going to actually result in sales. But A, you can't reach those people without turning on the megaphone in the first place. But B, there is some small value in brand equity that is occurring.
Yes.
Right. And so it's difficult to measure and it's almost impossible to measure in the short term. Um, and I would also say that for the cannabis industry as a whole, most people don't have the luxury of investing in brand equity. Everybody's like, I need more sales, I need, get win
Yep.
backs, whatever it is. Um, but there is value there if you're looking over a long enough time horizon.
Billboards are very expensive. Programmatic advertising, very expensive. And
Mhm.
I've run into those hurdles as well myself, trying to justify to a leadership team whether we had a programmatic advertiser, like why we need to spend 5 grand a month on a billboard for whatever reason, or not spend 5 grand on a billboard for whatever reason. Um, which is honestly, it's why I say that I'm so glad that I got my start in cannabis in highly regulated Midwest. I feel like I'm pretty good now at grassroots marketing and guerrilla tactics and organic reach. Be part of your community, I feel like goes much further than anything else that you could pay for. Um, that everything that we do is not necessarily forget the discount ladder, right? Forget the discounts, forget that you even offer them. You have to give your patron a reason to come back that isn't just based on price. And before, in medical days, that used to be bartender education, that used to be quality of service. Now it's more product availability and price. Those are the only two things that a lot of retailers feel like they have in their back pocket. Um, it's not though. I've got a whole differentiation exercise for my clients to go through because it's like greeting customers by name and saying good morning are kind of baseline standards at this point. Like you're supposed to be knowledgeable about what you have on the shelf. We know
Yeah.
when you don't. What is it, on programmatic advertisement, can I ask, are there certain themes that you've seen to be more successful than others in programmatic? Because I tend to go evergreen on programmatic because it is so expensive and takes so long to measure effect.
Yeah, so again it differs by state, right? So what's going on in that state, what the level of competition is, how well brands are known or not. Offers make a big difference, right? So there's a lot of people that are running evergreen first-time customer offers. The both the percentage off or the value being given matters a lot, and it also matters. What the AOV is of the dispensary itself or the customer segment you're targeting.
Fair.
And this is an interesting thing, which is that if you have someone with an AOV of like $20, a percentage discount is less meaningful than an
Okay.
actual dollar figure, even if the dollar figure actually is less value. And in a more extreme example would be like, buy this, get this other product free. Because you can put free on something, even if the actual monetary value for you is low, right? So you could give someone a pre-roll that cost you $1,
Yep.
and the customer might get more value out of that than $4 off their order, right?
Perceived value is huge on redemptions.
Yeah. And then also understanding the publishers where you're running ads. That makes a big difference. What is the context of the person that's going to be seeing the ads? The obviously the time of day is important as well. The number of touch points you get. I see a lot of people want to start, and that's kind of the hard thing with programmatic is people want to do a test and they want to spend a very small amount of money on a test. Like, oh, I want to spend
Yeah.
$1,000. And my, half jokingly thing that I always say is, well, I would actually recommend you hire someone with a sign to stand on the corner for 2 days because that's actually going to work better for you because you can't serve one ad to 20,000 people. That's not going to work. You need to serve like 20 ads to 1,000 people with the same dollars, but then that's not really a large enough cohort to move the needle anyway. So and then of course you can definitely overspend, right? There is a point of saturation. So we usually start at a reasonable level for a given dispensary and then see what that's doing and then turn the dial up to the point where the return value starts to diminish, right? So you reach a law of diminishing returns. Like spending an extra $5,000 in this market is going to net you some incremental new sales, but your ROAS is going to go from like 4x down to 2x, and then that's not a good program anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the different can't hit 20,000 people with the same ad really hits home because you're sending the same text message and email to literally everybody.
Yeah. Well, at least with the text, they're generally going to see it. With display advertising, the bulk of ads are not going to get consciously noticed, right? They're going to unless they're like super eye-catching or whatever. So you have to be able like the same person, you need to serve the same person like 20 ads over a period of a week because 19 of those are not really going to notice, or only two of them are actually going to register, right? And they may only register after they've seen the ad 10 times because there's sort of old statistics about this. Like you need to see a
Yeah,
brand at least 10
yeah.
times or 12 or 20 or whatever people say before your brain even acknowledges it as a real thing. Otherwise, it's just like Acme over in the corner, right? So,
I wonder when we're gonna get research that can break down the cannabis industry individually for those types of metrics and reporting on it. Because
well,
I
tell
very
me,
anecdotally feel like stoners need like 18 touch points because I forgot I saw the ad.
I would tell you that the average number of impressions to a purchase is probably 10 over a 7 to 10 day window. If you want it for something that's working, right? So someone's going to see an average of 10 impressions and they're going to see it between a week and 10 days. The other thing that happens with display is almost no one like sees an ad on their phone and places an order. That's just not what people are going to do, right? You're trying to prime the psychology so that when they're in a buying decision, they reach into their mind and they're like, "Oh, this brand." It's kind of like Coca-Cola, for example. Like a lot of their marketing is just really about current brand recall, so that when you are at the gas station and you're looking at a cooler full of drinks, you've seen Coca-Cola a bunch of times, and you have a mathematical
Yes.
edge when they're pulling that purchase slot machine, right?
Yes, on dispensaries too. It's right. They're going to Google dispensary near me, and if you are a multi-location operator, they're going to recognize your name versus the other random one. Dispos have very unique names, and I'm even myself sometimes I don't know if what I'm looking at is a dispensary or a hemp shop or we tried to go to one in California and it was somebody's house.
Oh,
It was on Google.
oh, he's probably a delivery person.
It could be, but like, why is that on Google?
Yeah, yeah, that is
I
funny.
feel very educated in the space and I still made that mistake, right? So it's all of the above. I like to put in when I did programmatic, I like to put the dispensary photo, like the storefront in the
Hmm.
ad. That I feel like made a very good impression.
As long as you've
We
got a good
don't
storefront,
Yeah, yes, of course, you gotta it was a beautiful storefront, and
that
it
that
was
helps.
all windows in the front and a nice big lobby, so I definitely wanted to showcase that, but we don't have that luxury when customers come in. They haven't been bombarded with 20 different Jetty ads or Jeter, pick a brand name that's multi-state. You
Yeah.
kinda have to do that, or you have to collab with those brands in order to get that out, and it's still a very limited market.
Yeah, we do a fair amount at this point, which it took too long to get here, of actual co-marketing campaigns between brands and retailers. It's been tricky for brands because they obviously can't sell directly to consumers, and the industry is scattered enough that it took a very long time to get to the point where we could get brand A and dispensary B to work together. Like, put your budget together, run a
Yeah.
brand ad to your retail location. I promise many other industries do this, and it works well. Um,
Billboards. I love doing co-branded billboards. It really softens the blow going to Ask Finance for 2,500 a month instead of the full 5K.
yeah, it does. Absolutely.
And then just throw
Um,
in brand sell-through on that metric.
and then both brands get brand equity out of it also. So, we're just about up on time. I didn't even realize that. I've been
Oh,
flying through
geez.
this. Yeah. Let's spend just a couple of minutes talking more about High Def Studios in case people want to get a hold of you. Um, we know that you help with retention plans, but give me your sort of like elevator pitch on what you do and how you help people so that, people can figure out if it makes sense to contact you.
Absolutely. So, as I said before, I build retention systems for retailers who are essentially tired of competing on discounts alone. Um, I work with dispos that typically have some marketing going on, but it might be inconsistent or nobody really has ownership over it, or really the only lever that is reliably pulled is another discount. Root problem is probably the same between all of them. Your customer journey has holes in it, and I hope you find the holes and develop a system that has clear ownership. And then we have numbers to prove that it's working. So I am working on all of the elevator pitch stuff. It's a
Yeah.
great employee, new business owner, right? It's like my third year entering running my own business. It's if you think that there is something that can be done better, faster, more efficiently, you're not using your platform to its fullest potential, let's have a conversation. I I bet that's it. I bet that's
Yeah.
it. Just gotta fill out
So
your
you can
customer journey, man.
solve the leaky bucket. Yeah, that's great. Well, I have been running businesses for quite a while now. And it's really just, in my opinion, it's a series of being able to recover from the mistakes that you make and then trying to learn from those and repeat them less frequently. It's
I think it's where I go wrong on some of this is I'm such a perfectionist. I'm learning that I am such a perfectionist. Thought I was doing really good with that. And then I started a business and I'm like, oh, you're even worse.
Oh yeah. And
So
then of course, yeah, there's always problems. Nothing's ever the way you want it to be. You kind of have to like learn to live in a permanent chaos of some sort or another.
I've been in cannabis for a decade. That kind of comes naturally, right? Now it's just all the efforts for me.
Yeah. Well, Seth, thank you
But
so
yeah,
much for spending the time today.
thank you.
We can have a follow-up conversation about hooking some stuff up to Claude. There's some pretty cool things you can do. And that's it, everyone. Thank you. This has been another episode of Cannabis Marketing Live. I'm your host, Jake Litke at Media Gel, and have a fantastic day.